I'm a little sassy. I'm also 17 and pregnant! The lady's vagina. That I wanted drugs. I wanted all the drugs. I wanted drugs right now. It's not clickbait. It was me a whole lot of years ago. I was pregnant at 17. Here's a little bit of backstory. I was born in a cult, raised in a cult. When I was 16, my mom was very sick. I did a video about it called Cancer or Demon Possession or something like that. Anyways, my mom was sick, and so me and a couple of my sisters were with her when she passed at my grandma's house. And I had a few months where I went to public school and I worked an after-school job. However, I didn't feel especially welcome by my relatives. They had a lot of compassion for my mom, but not for us girls who had no choice in being born into that situation. And, you know, at 16, losing your mom, I just wanted to be with people who felt like family, and the only family I had was my dad and my sisters, and they were all in Brazil, or most of them. So I went back to Brazil. During that period of time, though, where I had been out for like a few months, and I started to realize that the world out there was not the way that I had grown up perceiving it to be. I'm getting to the pregnancy, but this was my headspace leading up to it. And so, yeah, I was very disillusioned with the cult. I was decided that it was a whole lot of lies, but that was my family. That was what I knew, and I didn't feel accepted in the outside world. So I decided to make my dad proud. I knew how to slide under the radar for things, so it was just something I was accustomed to. Part of like rejoining everything, I was trying to go through with, you know, actually follow more of the rules, which included unprotected sex. And the only way to be a gold Christian, I'll do a video on that someday, I swear. So I was 17 at this point, just barely turned when I got pregnant. I remember the day me and my sister went to the drugstore, and we had just like a few pennies and stuff, and bought a test. And the next morning it was my day to make breakfast. So I got up before everyone else in the home in order to take the pregnancy test. And, I had told my sister, I forget which one, that if the test was positive, I was leaving. It was one thing for me to stay because it would appease my dad, and it was familiar to me. If I was having a child, I knew I could never properly protect them, and I would leave. So, I took the test and it came back positive, and I woke up my sister and woke her up saying, "Hey, Auntie," and that's how I told her. My older sister was already planning on leaving. She had gone back to Brazil to try to collect some of the younger sisters to take with her, see if any of them wanted to leave. And so she was working on that and trying to gain legal custody of the younger sisters and get it signed over to her as guardian, because this was a common practice. I had several legal guardians. It's another story. Anyways, so she was doing that. I was staying for the time being, was the original plan. But then I had this pregnancy test. Like, I wasn't going to tattle on what she was doing. I was going to assist her, but I was not joining her until this test came back positive, at which point I knew I needed to leave. And so we made adjustments to our plan. However, she knew she'd need some time to get established She wanted to create a soft landing point for us, especially because I was pregnant. So we had agreed that I would stay under the radar, stay pregnant in the cult and deliver, because they had a lot of OBGYNs that they would provision, people would donate their services. And so because they popped out so many babies, they had a pretty good network of OBGYNs that would give you some basic health care and delivery. And we didn't know what to expect with the medical system here in the US. So it just seemed smarter to give my sister, a year time to prepare the place. And meanwhile, I'm in Brazil, in commune, pregnant, plotting my escape. So I had to kind of fly under the radar. When you are pregnant in a cult, at least in our cult, I should say, the Children of God, the Family of Love, the Family International, it's what started this whole channel. Go look them up. There is loads of stuff about them, but I'm going to get back. This is about me and my pregnancy. So I was pregnant, and when you were pregnant, oftentimes there was a certain diet that they would, as much as possible, set aside for pregnant women, because we were giving birth to the next generation of cult people, so there was a level of elite status, at least dietarily. So I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant right away, other than a couple of my sisters. So I wasn't on that. I don't know why I kept it to myself. There was this big celebration for children being born, and people would get all weird and want to touch you. And I didn't want that. And so we kept it to ourselves. So the home that I landed in Rio, they had some sort of debt or something. I don't understand, because we were supposed to live debt free, but in the mid 90s there had been this charter, and it had, if there was home debt, it would get divvied up between anyone 18 older. And the home that we were living in had some form of debt. And so my 3 older sisters were over the age of 18. And so simply by us landing there, they accrued a percentage of that debt. So if there was 10 adults in the house, you'd each get, 10%. That's correct math. Okay. So yeah, you would each get, so yeah, that was the home we were assigned to land in. And instantly the 3 elder sisters all had this debt on them. And this is my understanding. I was 17 and pregnant. I don't remember all the things, but this is how I recollect it. So anyways, that home, we hadn't been there very long, a few months, and I was only a couple months pregnant when it got, I don't know, the home moved without us, or I don't know all the details. I've heard some things since days gone by, but as far as I understood in that moment, the home had disbanded. And we did not have, no home would take us because of the portion of debt that we had assigned to us 7 sisters through the 3 older sisters that had automatically incurred this debt just because they stuck us there. So anyways, I'm pregnant, right? We were removed from the communes. Now I have some thoughts on what that might have been later on. It seems it was possible that they were trying to isolate us a bit because our mom had just passed away. They were a few of us girls had been on the outside for a few months, so they were concerned about our influencing the other youth in the area, because we were fairly ostracized. And I had only been back for like a month and a half before we were removed from everything. Maybe 2 months, because I got back in January. Yeah, I got back in January, and I was pregnant by mid-February, and then I was, March, April. So yeah, we'd been back a few months, and they were so anyways, backtrack. So we were pregnant, and the 7 of us girls, ended up removed from the commune and on our own for the first time ever. The oldest was 21, the youngest were 11, and our mom had just died, and the 21-year-old just turned 21, like just, and I was 17 and pregnant, and they had set us up in this property of a supporter of the cult, and it was like her beach property, and it was off season, so she wasn't using it. There was no electricity. We had candles, and we'd sleep out on the porch. You'd get a decent ocean breeze, but you'd also wake up with all sorts of bugs in your sheets and in the but yeah, so either you suffered inside the house where it was a lot hotter but no bugs in the sheets, so but I did sleep out on the porch a few times, but yeah, we had a little propane stove, and we were basically being allowed to stay there for, I don't know if we had a rent or something, but I know we were sort of groundskeepers then. So there was a little bathroom and a couple bedrooms, and then we mostly slept out. And we kind of rotated, I think we had, I don't know, we had some actual beds, but we also like slept outside and on hammocks and stuff. So because we had this massive debt we had to pay off before any of us could rejoin a more stable situation, we were cut off from provisioning supplies, which would be, local supermarket places would donate fruits and vegetables and this and that. So I was very early pregnant, and only like two of my sisters knew at this time. And we would go entire days where we had no food until the end of the evening, when whoever came back from being out on the streets trying to fundraise, and whatever money they were able to put aside to buy, we had a lot of cornbread and beans, I'll say it that way, a lot of cornbread and beans in the evening. I do miss the cornbread. But yeah, so during the day, I stopped going out after a bit because I was getting really, really, really bad nausea a lot because my stomach was empty a lot. We had stopped by this one place that was a friend of the cult, and he would help with this and that, and he seemed to notice something was off about me. I'm already fabulously pale, but when I look sickly, I look very sickly. It's a little scary, especially in a southern climate where people tend to be a little rosy. Yeah, so seeing a really pale person extra pale is frightening. I think he noticed something was off, and he gave me some saltines, and I would nibble on them throughout the day, and I would sip a lot of water so that my stomach would think it had some food in it. But after a while, I would get nauseous. I didn't throw up ever. I think I only got nauseous. Actually, I would get nauseous more in the middle of the day than in the morning hours. But I kind of attributed that to the really, really bad diet we were on at the time. Anyways, we weren't there for a super long time. It was, I want to say a couple months maybe. And Dad did come visit us and brought some supplies, which was always lovely to have a few supplies. And, we ate good for a few days. It was helpful. But yeah, so Dad was sort of assigned to help us find a commune to move to as whatever the situation was abating. And so now the second oldest, I think at this point, was already decided to leave and had things in line, and her and another of the younger ones left with her. And then my older sister moved to a commune, and this was all being arranged at this time while we were living there. And so everyone kind of had established where they were going, who was taking the little ones, which older sisters were going where, and it was down between me and the 19-year-old. And I remember my dad having a conversation with me about how there was offers to take in the 19-year-old sister, and he was having trouble finding a location to put me. Now, he was not aware that I was planning on leaving at the time, so he wasn't entirely off with assuming I wasn't a super go-getter and with the team. He told me that he thought that it was because my sister was fully committed and I clearly wasn't. You know, I was a bit of a naughty child, I guess. That is why the homes were having, not wanting to take me, and that I needed to pray about my attitude. And I was always, I've always been kind of an oddball. Um, Even in the cult, I was a bit of an oddball. My sister enjoys being liked, and she is a more agreeable person for the most part. I've always been a bit outspoken, and a little troublesome. Not much, but my mouth gets me in some shenanigans. So, I understand, and for me in my head, what I was hearing Dad say, she's 19. She's a much more agreeable person. I'm a little sassy. I'm also 17 and pregnant. No wonder they didn't want me. So, but sure, it was all my attitude. It's okay. I am a little sassy. He's not entirely wrong. But I was also 17 and pregnant. Big surprise, they want the 19-year-old that has no offspring. And this is in a cult that highly encourages popping out miniature humans. So, anyways, there was finally a home that was able to take me. They already had 3 pregnant ladies there, so they had OBGYN set up and everything. So it was a perfect fit. It was quite a ways away from where I had been staying. I was in Rio, and I traveled to Brasilia, which is where I continued the rest of my pregnancy. And my stepdad was there. He and my mom never legally married, but he's always going to be Poppy's. So I'm going to rewind just a little bit. When we were at the beach house, Itacoatiara Beach house, at some point I had to tell, at some point more of the sisters found out until we all knew, which would explain why I was so feeble and struggling. So the sisters, cut me slack, and I would mostly just nap. They were doing their best to prioritize my health, and we decided we had to tell Dad, and we had to inform them because children were a gift from God, and it didn't matter what struggles we were in. If we had a pregnant lady, man, maybe that's why Dad came with the food. I don't know, but anyways, they eventually relocated me to Brasilia. I find it really funny that they were so much for we need to have all these kids, but then so hesitant to take in a single parent, a single mom at 17. Oh, yes. At the time that we were still in Itacoatiara, I'm remembering things as they come, okay? I have not told this story in years. At the time we were in Itacoatiara, my son's father, he was part of the cult, and he lived in a YA home, which was young adults, and you had to be 18 plus. If you were 17, you could not live in one of these homes. Now, they had made special exceptions, and so the father of my child took it upon himself to request a special exception so that I could join his home. He did not inform me of these plans. Until after the fact, and he did get a letter from Mama Maria herself, Queen Zerby. Okay, so she responded to his request that, God did not see it as a good idea at the time, and yada yada. I'm not sure all the reasons, but apparently it was not a good idea. So anyways, I did not know about this. Meanwhile, Dad made these other preparations, so I was shipped across the country at 17, barely pregnant, away from all my family, less than a year after my mom's death. So it was very isolating I had lived without my family before, but it was an especially vulnerable time. It was really helpful having my stepdad there. Bobby's was very helpful, just having someone who felt like actual family that would prioritize me and not the cult. And anyways, so they had a pretty good setup at this particular commune because there were three other pregnant ladies there. Our babies were all delivered within 2 months of each other, so we were all at roughly the same you know, pregnancy state. So we would do workouts together. You know, we did all the Lamaze bullshit. I will get to my delivery story. So, now we did have OBGYNs. I visited it with one. I had an ultrasound when my son was 6 months old, and they told me it was a 50% chance it was a boy and 50% chance it was a girl. And that was my only ultrasound, and that was what I was informed of. So I did not know until he was born what I was going to have. And I did have twice that I had my blood pressure taken, and they did some labs. We went to this, uh, it was this outdoor tent, and I feel like it was outdoors. Like we walked through like dirt and grass. So I don't know if it was something that was there for like maybe an outreach program for the local street families or favelas, or it was definitely not like an inner city setup. It was something out like more rural, maybe for indigenous peoples, or I don't know how we made contacts with the people we made contacts with, but it was out in an interesting location, and possibly some form of charity type thing, which they finagled their way into receiving benefits from. But anyways, yeah, I had my some blood work done, and everything seemed to be okay, and my pregnancy was healthy. Um, my first trimester had been not great, so I was entering my second trimester at this time, and it was nice to be getting some form of medical attention. Um, at that point. Anyways, the diet was a lot better. They did have special diet, lots of liver, and you could get extra milk and eggs. I did find it helpful to have a bit of protein in the morning. We had some days you just ate what you ate, and there was this local person that would donate this cereal, and it was a cereal that you cook, but it was like some kind of like cornmeal, and it was very, very hard, like these little grainy pellets. We used to call it chicken food because we joked that it was what they would feed the chickens, and I'm not entirely sure that was too far off. It was really bothersome, and I found my stomach not agreeing with it a lot. It would leave me very uncomfortable all day. I felt like I could feel the grains just churning in my stomach. Baby did not appreciate the chicken feed. So I finally got up the nerve to say something about it. And I talked with my stepdad, and he was very kind in the matter, and he spoke to the person. Now this was donation, so it feels kind of brazen to be like, yo, what you're donating is not good, can we have something better? But he did it. He persuaded them that it's a little difficult on one of the pregnant ladies, is having a little trouble with it, and maybe there was something softer that would be a little less hardy for the pregnant lady's stomach. And he convinced it. After that, I think I remember us getting like a very finely flaked type of cereal, which when it was cooked it would be just kind of a mush, which was so much more agreeable to my stomach. It was the best mush cereal ever. I will always be grateful for that mush cereal. It was so much better than the chicken feed, so that was wonderful. But like lunch, I would have a decent assortment of vegetables and fruits. I mean, it was Brazil. You could pick that shit off the trees, so that wasn't a big problem. But yeah, I do remember getting better food. And throughout my life, when someone was pregnant, they would do their best to have special dietary adjustments for pregnant and nursing mothers. It wasn't always met, and every home situation was a little different. I did get lucky that I was in a home that sort of catered to these pregnant women. Two of them were part of the leadership team, so there was there was way more medical attention than some other locations have had. Anyways, so I definitely appreciated that. My stomach was getting bigger and bigger. At some point, I was approaching 18, and I was terrified of the debt of this home. I had seen the crippling effect it had on my older sisters and myself, and I was really worried that if I left the cult, if I left after the age of 18, they might try to put their home debt on me. Now, granted, I did live there for a time, so, but I was a child, and I didn't want to leave the cult with this, feeling like I had some legal debt to the cult. And my 18th birthday was looming. My son was born 23 days before my 18th birthday, so just barely over 3 weeks before I turned 18 is when I became a mom. And so as my due date was approaching and my 18th birthday was approaching, my sister was working on plans. She was saving up money to get our first apartment together, so I wouldn't have to live with relatives, so that we could kind of start our own, our own life, independently. So she was working on getting that together. Yeah, so near the end of my pregnancy is when I did reveal that I was planning on leaving. I don't remember having a formal conversation. Maybe I did. I don't really remember, but I definitely made it known that I was intending to leave. During the months that I was there, I had befriended a next door neighbor, and he was on the police force. He did IT things. I don't even remember how we exactly first met. I think he may have had an interaction with the leadership of the home or something. Since they were neighbors, they tried to do, neighborly things, because if you befriend your neighbors, it's easier to get away with shit. So, they were doing that, and in this time, me and this one particular neighbor had become kind of close, and we became really good friends, and I did tell him that I was planning on leaving. Now, I just wanted to safely leave with my child. I didn't want to leave with a bunch of debt. I didn't want to stir up shit for the commune I was in. I wanted to have a healthy pregnancy, and I wanted to leave. That was the only intentions I had. I didn't want to end up homeless in a foreign country with a newborn. I didn't want that. I have family setting up something for me. Can you just let me go do that? Just don't kick me out until I get something lined up. I will keep my nose down. I did not want to stir up shit with the young ones. I didn't want to cause anyone else to exit. They had realized that when one person left, they might encourage other youth to join them or recruit them out, or I don't know what. I just wanted to go. I didn't want to convince anyone of anything. I wanted to leave with my child safely. That was my only priority. But I started getting a lot more eyes. They were concerned that I would cause problems with the local police, because I was friends with this neighbor who was on the police force there in Brasilia. And so things were getting a little bit tense. And words. Locate words. So yeah, things were getting increasingly tense. And then, to rewind a little bit, when I first got to that commune, only a couple of weeks or so had gone by before my son's father had contacted me, and um, he thought I had purposely like ran away. I'm like, dude, I was homeless and pregnant. I was relocated. You know how this system works. I didn't intentionally move anywhere. He's like, I was making this plan and setting up this thing. I'm like, you said nothing to me. I didn't know I had a backup plan, which I actually didn't. It fell through. But I'm like, I was not informed of any of this. I am 17. I go where I am instructed to go. And this is, I was put on a Greyhound to Brasilia. I did not have a decision in this matter. I was instructed, that's where I'm going, that's where I'm going. But he took it very personally that I had left him. Um, so I took it very personally that he was going to not listen to anything I said. And yeah, I kind of decided in that moment that for one, he was very immersed in the cult life. He he only very recently kind of had a awakening, so he was not ready to exit with us. And so I made the decision that yeah, this was not going to work out. It's going to be hard enough to just manage one child. I do not need to. And yeah. So anyways, yeah, but I had said that he could be present for his son's birth. However, because they were concerned with the situation with the police friend, they had my son's dad come early, like about two months early or so. And, you know, just in case I went into early labor, they were trying to have him like lure me back into the fold. And instead, it ended up being a bit of a rivalry. He was very aggressive towards the other man because, you know, emotions and jealousy, you know, natural things. But yeah, it didn't exactly work the way it was supposed to work. It was really problematic. It was very unpleasant on the nerves, and I was just like, you need to let it go. That may have been when it came out that I was leaving. I don't remember the exact order everything went down, but it was a little wild at that time. So by the time I became due, everything had kind of shifted a bit because everyone knew I was on my way out. So it was a very different vibe toward my pregnancy and the others. I didn't really leave the house. And I would just do at home chores and this and that. And I was like, hey, I will earn my keep. You know, I'm not asking y'all to just keep me here, but like, you know, I'll keep my nose down and I will clean whatever you want me to clean. I went into labor. That is a whole completely other story. That is a story for another day. I won't leave you hanging though. I will talk about my whole labor and delivery shenanigans. You know what? This is my whole pregnancy story, which includes labor and delivery. Let's fucking go. I got enough time on my card. All right, so so we were not supposed to use medications. Were used extremely minimal, and so. Anyways, I was raised watching children being born. There's a certain song that if played, it's a beautiful instrumental piece, and I will only see my little friend's head crowning and all the blood and the lady's vagina. And I have grown up seeing babies being born. So I had a reasonable grasp of what that experience would entail. I firmly believe that in a pinch I could deliver a child. That is the amount of knowledge that has been instilled in my brain about childbirth. Anyways, I went into labor. I woke up, I believe it was a Sunday morning, but I'm really not positive. I did not, insomnia rewind, insomnia. The last 3 months, that little fucker always came alive every time I tried to nap. One night, the lights had gone out and something about the dark and the peace, I was able to fall asleep a little early. And I was so grateful until I heard motherfucking chanting. Some of the young men had let themselves into the room. They went into my closet and they took out my dream catcher and decided they were going to light it on fire because it was evil voodoo shit. And they snatched my ring and threw it into the matu. It was a Indian chief silver ring, and superstitious people. I was so mad. I did get my book back from them though. But anyways, insomnia was a bitch. It was horrible, and I have insomnia to this day. But delivery. So I woke up, I had to pee really bad, and my dog is coming down the stairs. The morning I went into labor, I remember waking up, I felt like I needed to go to the bathroom urgently, so I went. And then I went back to bed and went back to sleep, and shortly thereafter, I don't know how much time had passed, but it wasn't much. It was around 7:30 or so in the morning. I had like barely dozed, and I got up again, and this time the bed was wet. And I was like, fuck, urinary incontinence, like, but it as I was walking to the bathroom, it wasn't just like a little whoopsie. It was like a stream, and I recognized that my waters had broke. Is that how you say your water? My water broke. So that's when I knew I was in labor, and that's likely what woke me up. So that was about 7:30 in the morning. And so I started collecting. I had a baby bag ready to go, and I was walking around. We were timing the contractions, and there was this path at the front of the house by the palm tree, and I just remember walking in circles and circles and circles for a while. We finally went to the hospital at about 1 p.m. or so. And I was brought into a pre-labor room, and there was 2 beds there. Other ladies would come in and then leave, and come in and leave. And, you know, as they shuffled patients around, I don't know that they were all going into labor. But anyways, I was in labor. At this time in my life, I was pretty fluent in Portuguese, which is what they speak in Brazil. And I had even been mistaken for a southerner, a Paulista, where the accent is kind of similar to a gringa accent, and I could pass like I was from São Paulo at the time. I no longer can. But anyways, I was very confident in my ability to communicate, is what I'm saying. However, what I found was during my labor, I was unable to access my linguistic skills, and every time I tried to communicate in Portuguese, it came out in English. It was very, very frustrating. I had a hard time understanding what was being spoken to me. It's like that part of my brain that understood Portuguese was like, nah, we're busy today. So I was having trouble communicating. Now, there was a family friend present. Her and my mom were the best of friends in the cult. She was like a sister to our mother, and I have a lot of respect for her. And she was there with me, and to me, she was a representation of my mother in that moment. And I didn't want to disappoint her by being a sassy little bitch, but whew, I really wanted to swear and be the most tempestuous child ever, but I didn't want to disrespect my mother that way, and I did my best cult girl to stay calm. I asked her if there was anything they could give me for the pain, because that Lamaze and the breathing is all distraction techniques and do nothing for the pain. I was on all sorts of 4s and doing hula hoops and rotating the fucking pelvis. It did not help with the pain. And when I asked her, I'm like, can't they, like, you know, I've heard there's, you know, things that they do that alleviate pain. And she's like, oh, honey, it's okay. Let's pray. It is one thing if you mentally prepare to give birth naturally with no assistance of medication. Um, I fully expected that I would at least have a say in that. And I expected that since they knew I was leaving the cult, when I say I am willing to take injections and pills and whatever they want to put in my body, so this pain is not here right now. Um, but yeah, I did not have that option. It was not assumed. It was not offered. It was not an option. And because I couldn't speak Portuguese, I couldn't communicate that I wanted drugs. I wanted all the drugs. I wanted drugs right now. Um, so I was in severe or intense labor for 2 hours. My actual labor was start to finish 8 hours, with only two being very intense labor, which was spent at the hospital. Um, that is a pretty quick labor, is my understanding. It's not, of course, the quickest. There's way faster, but it is pretty quick. And so yeah, I don't want to complain. I know people who have been in that for a lot more days, and I don't want to detract from any of that, but this was my 8 hours. But yeah, only the last two were very, very intense, and yes, I really would have the epidural, yes. um Anyways, that didn't happen. I was wheeled into the delivery room, and the only anesthesia of any form I had was a little local anesthesia in my bits. And then I felt a snip, and I was told to push. And so I was doing all the breathing and the pushing and the stopping and the starting and the things that you do. And he came out fairly easily. Labor wasn't horrendous. But yeah, I gave birth, and I remember studying his whole face because I was worried that once they took him away that I was going to get back a different baby. So I studied his face, and he has a little dimple on his chin, and I was like, recognize my child immediately. They're so mushy, and they all kind of look a little the same. So I like memorized this child. Anyways, so I remember being placed in the hallway for a bit, and I don't remember if I don't think his dad was not in the delivery room. No, I did not want him in the delivery room. He could be at the hospital, but I did not want him in the delivery room. I don't need him to see all that business getting shredded. No. Anyways, but he was at the hospital. Anyways, I was then moved to the recovery room, and they had my son with them, doing nurse things. And so my room I shared with three other ladies. The door was here, my bed was here, and there was another bed here and here on either side of the room. So hopefully that reads. So I was by the door, and there was a bathroom, and there was three other beds. And I was there for about an hour or so before my son was brought to me, maybe a couple hours. And during that time, a lady was brought in, a very pregnant lady who was in labor was brought in. And so we were like, the other two ladies had babies, but she was still pregnant and in labor. And I don't remember exactly why they had brought her to that wing. I'm not sure, but they were having trouble communicating with her. I laughed because I was having the same problems earlier, and they were having trouble communicating with her because she was deaf. And so she knew sign language, and no one in the maternity ward, I guess, knew any sign language. And so I had a fascination with sign language from when I was rather young, and I learned the alphabet and a few other words. So I found myself acting as a translator, spelling words in sign language in Portuguese to translate for this woman with the medical doctors, which I still see as my most challenging interpretation situation ever. And I remember thinking, where was this ability? Like, an hour ago when I could have used it for myself. But anyways, that woman left, and then another woman that I remembered from the labor room before came to the room, and they all had little girls, and I was the only one with a boy. The doctor had inspected my child and found that he was a little bit jaundiced. Two other babies in the room were in light incubators because they were also born jaundiced, and the one baby in particular, they had to have him in that light. She was only allowed to take him out to feed and had to immediately put him back in, so he would cry all day. And the other baby girl, did I say he? It was a she. They were so little. They all looked like peanuts and aliens. But there was another baby girl with a super full head of hair, really pudgy little baby. And she wasn't as severe, but she had to stay in the incubator for most of the day, but she could be out a little bit more. And they had a no nookie policy at the hospital, but I snuck nookies to the other ladies because I had pink ones and they all had baby girls, and so I gave them all the pink nookies, and they just would hide them from the nurse. If it soothes the baby, it soothes the baby. Anyways, I have no apologies for nookie using. Anyways, I was naughty and I gave him nookies. At nighttime, they turned off the room light, but we had little overhead lights over the beds. And I sleep with my eyes partially ajar, and so I see light and movement. So I really need to sleep in a very dark room. And I asked the nurse if she could, how I could turn off my light. And she informed me that they do not turn off because they need the mothers to be on alert in case someone who should not be there is there potentially to kidnap their children. So at that point, my son did not go back into his little bassinet. He stayed curled up with me. All the ladies told me, but basically they were implying that they were safe. Their children were safe from abduction because everyone would want to go for the blue-eyed, pale-skinned boy in the room. So, yes, apparently those fetch a high price in the black market. And, their babies, being girls, were mostly safe, considering I had a prized child. So my son did not leave my side after that. The next day when the pediatrician came to check him, I got the dreaded news that he was jaundiced. However, I could take him home. He didn't need to be in one of those incubators. And whenever the sun was out and it was warm, to have as much of his skin exposed as possible, because the vitamin D will help the kidneys, get healthy. And that did work for my son. I remember when the ladies, when I mentioned who the pediatrician was, they all had children there before and were familiar with the pediatricians at this particular hospital. And they were like, she's never going to let you go home early. Your child's a little yellow. You're going to be here. She always keeps people here. And then when she let me go early, they're like, that's because, I'm American. And I'm like, if I get a privilege for being an American, I get to not sleep here another night, hoping someone doesn't steal my baby, I will take it. If that is the privilege I am given, yes, thank you. I very much appreciate it. But I was allowed to go home after the 24 hours with my son. I didn't have a whole lot of afternatal care. I actually don't recall having any afternatal care. So for pain management post-delivery, it was some form of yellowy, it looked kind of oily the way it was in the syringe, and you were supposed to put like a syringe of this fluid into like an 8-ounce glass of water, and it was the most bitter, nasty. It was probably just the cheapest painkiller that they could get or someone could donate. So much appreciation. It did the trick, but it tasted horrible. And so I preferred to get it over with in the form of a shot. I'd put like a little bit of water and put the syringe thing in and just chug it like a shot. And then I would, swallow a clean 8 ounce glass of water afterwards. And I remember one time because I was given very little, I was very careful with how much I used it. And I delayed taking a dose because I would wait for the pain to come before I would take another dose to prevent the pain coming. And I found myself paralyzed a foot away from the medication, and just trying to reach that foot to get that medication was the most unpleasant moments. I was struggling so hard to move, and I didn't want to cry out either. Honestly, I didn't even really have a whole lot of breath because the pain was very unpleasant. But anyways, I healed up reasonably well. I didn't have any visits after. I never got cleared to fly, which is its own story. My son was 2 months old is when I arrived in the States. But that's whole other stories. But yeah, that is my pregnancy and delivery story of my son at 17 in a cult. And let's see how the edits go for this one. Thanks for joining, and I have more stories to tell. Ciao.